Okay, welcome to Witchpolice Radio. I'm recording another one of these quick hits episodes, which, if you're unfamiliar, is kind of a short form interview with a local artist. And the artist on this episode is someone who's relatively new to me and definitely new to the podcast. So I think that the best way to start this off is if you want to just introduce yourself and maybe just give a bit of background about what you're doing musically.
Yeah, no worries. So my name is Drew. I'm a rapper and producer, part of Core 204. I used to go by TroubleChild, but I decided to rebrand myself.
Okay.
And because it's so much easier to answer by my own actual name than something else.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. So how long have you been doing this? Because I've definitely seen your name. I mean, I know we've had conversations online, here and there, but how long have you actually been involved in the local rap scene?
So my buddy Walker approached me around when I turned 18, and he's like, "Hey, you want to do music?" And I was like, "Well, I ain't got nothing else to do, so fuck it, sure."
Yeah.
And so we started making music. The first show we went to was Drink Bleach on 420 that year, and then we were like, maybe that was 2019. We were like, let's do music now. And we were like, yeah, let's do it. And so 2020, I released my short, I guess album you'd call it. My album, Line in the Snow.
Okay.
And then since then, I've been accidentally releasing songs, realizing that I pretty much released my whole album. And I was like, shit. So I had to stop. I was like, no more releasing anything.
Right.
I need to write more stuff. And then the pandemic happened, so I'm kind of hooped. Yeah,
well, that's a pretty short amount of time to have been actively making music before the pandemic happened, right? You had this maybe small taste of what it's like beforehand. Yeah. So how has this affected you? Have you been able to to write and to be creative during this time period?
So before the pandemic, I was pretty much just a rapper, a writer, or whatever you want to call my last tape, however you want to define that. I was pretty much just that. And then once the pandemic hit, I was like, well, I need something else to do. And I don't want to be spending, 20, 30, 50 bucks on beats and leases. So I might as well just start making my own.
Right.
And so I started producing beats, and then I was like, hey, I'm getting good at this. And I've been trying to do that ever since, but now I started working. I was like, there goes my time. And I was like whipping up like so many beats in a week. I was like, I need to fucking slow my ass down.
Is that more like just wanting to kind of, go for quality over quantity? Like just make better beats and better songs rather than just churning out as much as possible?
I think my quantity is quality. And then I'm like, ugh. But I spend a fair amount of focus and time listening to everything.
Okay.
And because I'm just using GarageBand on my iPad, because that's how ghetto and DIY I am.
Right.
I just do the 8 bars, and then I'm like, all right, time to loop this bitch.
Okay. And that's working for you, obviously.
Yeah, it works. Gets the job done.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that especially doing hip hop too, right? There's so many people, all of even here in Winnipeg, but all over the world, doing what you're doing. They're making beats at home on whatever equipment they have. They're releasing it online. How do you get yourself heard above all of that? Because everyone and their dog is a rapper. A lot of them are terrible, so a lot of them are great. But I mean, there's just so much content, especially in that genre. So what's kind of your plan for getting your own voice heard and your own beats heard, kind of above everyone else?
Man, my promotion game is shit. I'll be honest right now. It's hard because working with someone else, you kind of rely on the other person a lot more. And because the pandemic, I've been like literally isolated from that group. And so I'm like, shit, I got to promote my own stuff.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, I don't know what to fucking post anymore. Like, I'm not going to release any more music because, well, there goes the fucking album
right.
or the tape or whatever you want to call it. And so I'm like, well, shit, I'm just gonna, post my stupid shit, change my profile pic to New Jack, flipping someone off. Yeah. I don't know. At this point, I'm like, I don't know what to fucking post. Do I post like COVID related stuff? Do I not? Do I take people's mind off things? And that's what I tried to do with the chop up, which I did on my Instagram live for a bit. I tried to do it and it just wasn't working well. And I tried to promote, myself, other artists.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't working. So I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm just going to focus on me.
Right. Well,
I'm going to be a selfish asshole for a bit.
Well, I think people have time to be a selfish asshole during the pandemic, though, too, right? Because everyone is in
Yeah.
this weird lockdown thing that no one has experienced before, for the most part, like ever in our lives. So it's definitely giving people weird ways of trying to get their stuff out there, if they're even trying at
Yeah.
all, right? But obviously, what you're doing is hip hop. I mean, that's pretty clear. But
I try.
how do you define
I
it
try.
beyond that, right? I mean, like this, because hip hop is at this point, it's an umbrella genre which has so many different kind of styles and subgenres within it. Do you sort of have a way that you define what it is you do within that larger style of music?
So hip hop is a culture. So there's
Yeah.
clothing, art, dance, the music, and then
Sure.
in the music branch of it, there's the umbrella of multiple genres. So I try and after I released my first tape, I realized that emo-rap kind of lane wasn't for me. It wasn't.
Right.
I was like, it was fun at the time, but looking back, I'm like, what? God damn. And so I switched over to rap, and so I'm like, all right, I'm going to focus on the rapping part. And so I'm listening to different artists. I'm listening to Suicide Boys, 3 6 Mafia, just so different artists that I wouldn't have been listening to at that time.
Okay.
Just so that I can, focus on the cadence or the flow or the sound of the hi-hats and what pitch they're at, or the snare, the drums, what have you.
Well, that's I mean, this is definitely my personal bias, but I'm older. I'm almost 40. The rap I grew up on is very different than what the rap is now that people in their teens and 20s listen to, for sure. And I have this mental block against a lot of that emo rap stuff because it just sounds like garbage to me. And that's not an offense to the artists that make it. I'm not the target audience for it, right? I'm too old.
Yeah.
But so it's always nice to hear when someone is focusing on kind of the fundamentals of lyrics and production, because I think my biggest beef with some of that stuff is it sounds so what's the word? I don't think uninspired is the word, but it sounds like there's not any real depth to it. Like they haven't really, and this is obviously just my own ears clouding my judgment on it, right? But
yeah, well, it depends on who you're listening to at that
that's
point.
Right. That's right. That's true as well, right? Yeah. So, but I mean, do you? What's your take, I guess, on the current state of hip hop? I mean, the stuff that's coming out in the mainstream and the stuff that's popular. How do you feel about it? Because I'm so detached from that it's not, my opinion doesn't matter.
I think it's very, I wouldn't say pick and choosy, but I find it's very cliquey. So if you're not a part or of a clique or affiliated to a clique, you kind of get clouded, you kind of get brushed to the gutter a bit more. And the one thing I hate most is how genuine, music isn't really made genuinely anymore. You're not in a studio with someone and you're actually having a good conversation, hey, does this sound good? Does this sound good? If not, how can I make it better? But because now it's oh, you paid me for a feature, you get a feature, and that's it. It's oh,
right. It's
okay.
It's not an honest collaboration,
I just,
right? Yeah.
Showed you my friends and my colleagues and what, we talked on the way to the studio. Isn't there there's got to be somewhere along that line where you're okay, I'll be a little bit more nicer or more genuine to this person, even if they don't deserve it or earned it. Everyone deserves respect in general. And if, you have to earn respect, if you lose respect, you have to earn that back. And everyone's oh, you earn respect, earn my respect, earn this and that. There's got to be a base. There's got to be a foundation to which I can earn more of.
Sure.
And I'm just, that's my beef.
Sure. So if people want to hear, if people are hearing about you for the first time on here and they want to hear more of your stuff, what's the best option at this point to find your music?
Honestly, just DM me. I'll send you a link on my Instagram. I'll be honest. I got to sort that out.
But you have
SoundCloud.
that one, that stuff that's already out on SoundCloud, right? Yeah.
Pretty much SoundCloud's the safest bet. Okay. Maybe Matter, if that's still up. I think that's in my Instagram bio. Yeah.
Cool. So is Instagram kind of the hub to find all that stuff? You can go and find the links to everything? Right on.
Yeah, pretty much. My Twitter is just full of stupid tweets and Yeah.
I think that's everyone's Twitter. I think that's kind of what Twitter is at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.